Welcome to my Wake Up Flow. The intention of this is to just help get you over the hump from feeling stagnant to feeling like you can do something more vigorous or not. So let's start with some breathing. We'll lay down on your back. Make sure your knees are stacked over your hips, arms resting gently at your side. There we are. And then just take some nice big low rib, low back expanding breaths 5 times, nice and slow. If you'd like to work on hip position to ribs, because you have a excessive sway back, you can just gently pull your heels into the bench and tuck your tail off the ground a centimeter. So there's a little tension through the back of the body, and you're aligning those hips with the ribs a little more. See if you can lengthen the time between the exhale and the next inhale on these last breaths. And then as you exhale one last time, think about lengthening your neck toward the floor. See if you can get that arch between the floor and your neck out of the way. For your next 5 final breaths, I want you to raise your arms over your shoulders and then protract your shoulder blades. Push them apart by pushing your palms toward the ceiling, and continue breathing in nice long breaths, continuing to try to lengthen the time between the exhales and the next inhales. If you are pulling into the bench and tucking your tail, I want your tailbone to be just like a thumbnail from the floor. Nice, long, slow breaths. You should be finishing up your last breath cycle right here. Okay. Go ahead and move away from that object you had your feet on. Give yourself some space. We're going to stay on our backs, tuck our knees to our chest, and just rock gently side to side with a little compression, thighs to belly. Go ahead and bring your arms out into a T. And if it feels good, let your knees rock side to side a little bit deeper so that you're pausing at each side when your thighs rest down to the ground. And as you come back through the center, tuck the knees tight to your chest and try to control the descent to each side. You can add a head turn, looking away from the direction your knees are falling. And while you're there, check to make sure your arms are in a T and not in a Y. Next thing you can progress to is extending the knees once the thighs touch down to the ground. Well, there's one. You can do both on each side if you like. Or just the top leg, whatever feels better. We're going to keep building onto this rotation. First thing we're going to do is extend the top leg out and press ourselves up to a seated position. And then try to find that rotated position, a spinal twist position again. Again, extend the top leg long out away from you and keep the bottom knee bent so you can press yourself up to a seated position. And again, keep the bottom knee tucked, reach out with the top leg, nice and tall, and then The same side you're reaching long with the leg, reach that arm long as well. Nice and strong overhead through the fingertips, trying to get the bicep next to the ear. So have a seat, reach up strong. Back to your spinal twist. You can put your head down if you like. I clearly like to keep my head off the ground when I roll through the center. And last thing we're adding is this big hip extension. So roll through, extend the top leg, press through that inside palm, lift up into strong hip extension. Your reach can go overhead, as shown here, or you can try reaching it to the wall behind you. So you're arching through your back a little more, doing a little twisting through the back a little more. The point of this is to do what feels best for you. So instead of making this a challenge for yourself, think about just what feels nice and what you enjoy, what positions you enjoy most in this movement pattern. All right, let's rock and roll. We're going to do a few quadrupedal movements, and then hopefully you feel ready for some relaxation or ready for some movement, whatever your body is telling you it needs next. Rock and roll, come all the way up to seated, and then back between the shoulder blades. I'm just trying to keep my lumpy shirt down. Next one, come all the way up to seated and swing back over to quadruped. Let's start with some cat-cows. I spoiled the ending. See if you can segment the spine so that you start by rounding the neck, and then between the shoulder blades, mid-back, low back, and tailbone, and then reverse the position of the spine going into extension in opposite pattern. So neck, push the shoulder blades up, push the mid-back up, then the low back, and then finally the tailbone. And then as you come back to cow, roll the tail up, low back, drop the mid-back, drop between the shoulder blades, and lift the head. Try another round of that. If you can pattern the breath with this, please do. If your segmenting is taking a little more time than it would to do a traditional cat-cow, then go ahead and breathe freely. Okay, let's move on to wrist rocks. Just begin by trying to drive the shoulders over the knuckles and then sit back with the toes tucked under. So we're getting a little broken toe flexion here too. And then let's rock side to side, shoulders over alternate wrists. Okay, and then we're going to just do a little adductor stretch each side. So slide one leg out and sit back to that kneeling heel. And then bring it in and switch sides. Go at your own pace here. I'm adding a little T-spine rounding or arching, extension in between each of those because I tend to arch my low back quite a bit. So I'm trying to remind myself to arch through the T-spine, the mid-back. And you can try this as well. All right, next movement, we're going to continue reaching the leg, but we're going to reach the leg out behind us and come to a modified pigeon. It's modified only because we are keeping the ankle behind the knee rather than swinging it around so it's our shin is perpendicular to our body like we do in a traditional pigeon. So if you want more rotation in the thigh, you can, my wrists are just getting tired, I'm switching to a fist, you can try this too. You can swing that ankle forward toward the opposite wrist as you glide the leg back. That's your choice. All right, let's come to broken toe pose. Kneeling with the toes tucked under and just shake the hands out. Keep shaking them. Keep shaking them. Almost there. One big shake left. And then freeze and let your arms just relax. Enjoy that sensation down your arms. And then let's do a little side sit. Just coming from broken toe, kneeling position. Lifting the knee you're moving away from up and planting that sole of the foot as you shift to the opposite hip. So the other hip. Kneel and sit. You're welcome to add a big hip extension in between each of those kneels. And then you can also put your soles together as you come to that seated position. Okay, we're going to go around the bend this time. So sit to your hip. And then instead of coming back to the front of the room, go ahead and swivel your knees to the back of the room, back up to the hip extension, and then let's go back home again. Same way you came. Retrace your steps back to the front. Okay, one more time, this time the other way. So sit, swing your knees through, kneel toward the back, and then sit to the side, swing the knees through, and come back up to a kneeling position. Oh, we're in high kneeling position. There we go. Finishing up with some more back bends, extending the hips, plant the hand, and reach the opposite hand forward or overhead. And just take your time switching sides. You can sit to the tops of your feet if it feels good in between. And if you want to go farther, you could pull your heels apart and sit between your heels before each hip extension. And then again, you can reach to the opposite wall behind you for that stretch. Frog stretch to finish. Work on tucking that tail if you tend to arch your low back. Let's start with just a rotation one time to each side. Plant one hand, reach the opposite arm up, and then switch. And this time reach back as you switch sides. And then we're coming up to a hip extension, knee extension, not hips, and then back down to the bottom of that position. Only go as far as you can move comfortably. So if that means extending your knees not quite fully to avoid rounding the back excessively or pain in the hamstrings, then do that. Also, a wider stance could give you more space to access a bigger knee extension. Couple more reps. And then walk the hands forward. One more nice short downward dog. And that's it. Thank you for joining me. See you again for a core workout soon.